I want to talk to you about the whole label that you've carried throughout your career, the blonde bombshell label. Did it bother you always when, in fact, as we all know, you can act perfectly well
Without it?
without it? Yes.
No, it didn't bother me because it was really at the time part and parcel of the whole glamour film game which was going on. And in fact, I was the first blonde bombshell sex symbol that England had ever produced. And to be the first of anything is always very good. And I was competing for all that publicity and glamour against the then Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield in America. You know, it was very difficult to compete because the sort of films that I was making in England were funny little black and white, low budget things. And they were doing things like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire with 20th Century Fox, which were fabulous Technicolor movies. And this was hard, but I managed it. I got there.
There was a whole crop of you in the 50s. Why was it such a phenomenon of that time?
Well, I think the blonde had always been a sort of glamour figurehead in films right from the days way back when, for instance, she was a blonde bombshell. And then one had Jean Harlow, who was the first really big platinum blonde bombshell that Hollywood had produced. Then they went on to Alice Faye, who sang, and then Betty Grable, who was the blonde pin-up during the war in the 40s. And then Marilyn, more or less, took over Betty Grable's crown. In between, there were people like Lana Turner and Kim Novak and all the other blondes, Veronica Lake, who did the Peekaboo Bang and all that. So there'd always been a blonde at the head of it, with a few other blondes dotted around. You know, it was America that really led the field because something in the American male felt a stronger sexual urge, I suppose, towards the glamorous blonde as opposed to the rather quieter brunette. I don't know really how it all got started, but that was it. And then Marilyn and, of course, Jane Mansfield came along, hot on her trail, and reigned for quite a while as a sort of a lesser version of Marilyn, really, a much more brassy version. And then, of course, I was the British blonde. There was also a blonde in France just before Brigitte Bardot appeared as the sex queen of France, called Martine Carole. She appeared in many French sort of sexy romps. And so there we all were, dotted around the globe and having great fun and living very glamorous, flamboyant lives and doing all the luxurious things that ordinary people thought that we all did.
You blondes have more fun, do you
Well,
think?
that's the thing. I'm sure. Well, we certainly did in those days. Unfortunately, all that really has gone now.
Why did it go?
Well, because, you see, there's no film industry to speak of in England anymore, which is a great shame because I think we have the finest actors and actresses over there in the world, quite honestly. And when J. Arthur Rank finally pulled out of films, he was the big organization and the whole thing that really pulled the British film industry up by its bootstraps and got it into the field alongside America and France and all the other countries and Italy. But then his organization went into the red. And then, of course, television took over. And you see, with the advent of television, the whole business changed.